business, soul-led purpose, and sacred sexuality, the Queen's Council is a container devoted to the intimate magic of queenship, soul, sex, magic, and the goddess. Together, we weave a coven to hold our wildest dripping pleasure as magic oozes from our souls, cascading into the world like the ambrosia nectar of the divine. If you're ready to become a confident, embodied woman running your feminine-led empire from a place of spaciousness, wild creativity, alignment, and pleasure, the Queen's Council is opening up applications. Experience a radical and loving relationship with money and prosperity, wildly thriving and living your visions for your most beautiful life. Because being a queen in your life means setting higher standards for your pleasure, your purpose, and prosperity. As a mystic, visionary artist, or healer here on the planet to shift the collective trajectory, you're ready for a massive shift internally in how you be in the world. So step into your queenship surrounded by other women who are setting a higher standard for how they create and manifest in the world. Applications open now, and we start in November. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Temple Talks, transmissions from the New Earth. And today we are here with Carina Alencar. And Carina is a conduit for the essence of Selvagem, our innate wildness. Her voice carries this wild feminine frequency in a siren's song of love, death, and ecstasy, liberating those who have been caged, chained, and tamed. Carina heard the call of Selvagem and reclaimed her path. Actress, intuitive channel, muse, she is now a shape-shifting performance artist, ceremonialist, and sensual shaman who reconnects others to their creative genius and erotic embodiment. Her performance art rituals are a unique experience that will give you a taste of her exquisite elemental journey and magic. Welcome, Carina. What a fantastic
Damn, that sounds good.
Oh, honey, I cannot wait for this conversation because, you are really like the voice of the innate wild woman as well as the erotic mother. And this is what I feel like we've been able to deeply connect around because we are both these wild erotic women and we're also mothers. And we're also solo parenting, like we have parents that we co-parent with, but it's kind of a really wild path to be following as a parent, a mother, and also this wild woman. And so, I know you in a very intimate sense in the Queen's Council, but for those of you who are new to, and please tell me how to pronounce Selvagem, and maybe start with like, what does that mean, and how does it come and connect you to your heritage?
Okay, so it's selvagem.
Selvagem.
And that's Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. I'm originally from Brazil. And I've been on this amazing exploration of rewilding the erotic and embodiment and, all the things. And, but I'm an artist, right? So, as I'm trying to learn these different traditions and practices and lineages and, and kind of getting my feet wet in all these different arenas, it's sparked so much creativity, right? And so as I was, playing around with different expressions, what came through was this wild woman and the wild feminine, the wild dark feminine who does not want to be put in boxes, who does not want to be labeled, who doesn't want to be told what to do.
That sounds familiar.
who is ready to be fucking free in her body in this human existence, and who is not tolerating any bullshit, any chains.
Preach. Preach it.
And also not just bullshit from like external, also the internalized bullshit, the victimhood stories, the being trapped inside your own cage, right? So it was like this wild animal wanting to break out of the cage. So that's where I was like, what is this energy that keeps wanting to come out? And I'm, you know, every time I was in ceremony doing a ritual, this voice wanting to break through, my body wanting to move in a new way. And I was like, I was trying to give it a name, and I was like, it's just selvaging, wildness. It's just, you know, wildness, wilderness, savage. You could translate it like in the noun as the noun would be like the savage or the wild one, you know?
Yeah.
Because savage has all these connotations in English. So I don't know. But yeah, because my, you know, native language is Portuguese, there's a lot of mixing of languages, and really like this, and that's part of it too, you know? So often I'm in the US, as a minority, so often I'm passing, you know, and because I'm bilingual and I don't have an accent, and it's very easy for me to just translate myself for other people. And the wild one does not want to be translated. He is like, screw that.
So in this journey of like, you know, you're hearing this like essence that wants to break through. Was this before you had a child, or was this really like after you opened that portal in your body? Like maybe where was the timing of this in your journey? Because you also, I mean, you are a trained actress. You have a fuck ton of experience and training. Like it's your credentials are actually really like mind-blowing. So no, it's true. Like you have a ton of training and expertise and extensive training around this. So where was this in the timeline of your journey?
I mean, I've always been a wild one. I've always been, you know, had that rebellious spirit. And you know, and that doesn't mean that wasn't alongside, you know, being the A student, overachiever, teacher's pet, you know, wanting to be the good daughter, right? But I think, I think sexuality has always been a piece where at a very young age, I was like, what is this double standard? Like, what's going on here? You know, and like, I was very aware of my body. I was very aware of the pleasure that was possible through my body. And I remember standing up to the nuns in my Catholic school in religion class and being like, no, actually, we need to touch ourselves to get to know our bodies, and so that we can articulate what we like, what we want, what we don't like. Like, how are we supposed to share ourselves with someone if we don't know ourselves first?
You said this to the nuns.
Oh yeah. And well, this was a very young.
Just like drop. They are like, oh
yeah, she didn't know what to do.
Hell no.
She was my religion teacher, and she was very young, and you know, she would connect with us. So like I felt kind of comfortable talking to her more openly. But she was like, well, what happens is you might get addicted, and then you won't be as keen to be with a partner because you're so like, I don't know, self-fulfilled, self-involved. I don't know what the theory was. And I was like, this is really weird. Like, so now I'm supposed to, I know, right? Look at what she's feeding me.
perk up, right? Because it's like the more, I think too, the more hidden something is, right? And again, this is like with sexuality and things, the more hidden it is, it's almost like it becomes this thing that you want to taste, you want to explore. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and just for her even to have that logic, like to use, because it wasn't just something as black and white as like, oh no, that's the devil. Don't do that. It's
yeah.
bad for you. It'll, cause you. It was like there was like this psychological like, like she was trying to instill this fear, right? Of, oh wait, caution, because what if this happens? It'll, won't it be horrible if you end up being this deviant who just likes to self pleasure and you don't need someone else? So there's like a presumption that you you need someone who is male, and that male is not going to be happy with you if you pleasure yourself better than he can. Or if you know what you want and you're asking for that, right? Or, you just don't even feel the need for him. There's just so much patriarchy wrapped up in that statement.
And people wonder why, humans are so messed up around sexuality. I mean, Jesus, like literally, Jesus, literally. No, I'm just joking, but Jesus.
And this is in Brazil, which is a very tends to be
Catholic?
sexist and very Catholic, and definitely a double standard of like men are super encouraged. Boys are super encouraged to explore their sexuality, and women are encouraged, but almost like, with that extra layer of shame of, well, you better be careful how you're viewed. You can't do too much, right? You can't show too much. You can't have too much fun because you're going to be read a certain way,
And so that's like I think that's a big reason, and maybe you've noticed that with other people, maybe that's a big reason why women are actually really afraid to explore that aspect of themselves, because there's a lot of fear around judgment. And so what did you have to encounter within yourself or dissolve or work through in order to be able to access that wild woman? Because I think that for so many women, there is this desire to express themselves wildly, or, I was having a conversation with another woman in one of our interviews, and to really like give yourself permission to fully explore your hedonism and your pleasure. And yet, because of society's views on, well, a woman who explores her pleasure is a slut or a whore or is easy. And so there's like something that holds women back because they want to be that good woman. But actually, what happens when you give yourself permission to do that and explore that and not give a flying fuck what other people think of you? Oh, well, now you've just really freed yourself. So watch out. Right? Like, was this a turning point? Was there a turning point that you had, like an experience or something that you were like, oh, I don't care?
Well, I mean, I think that, even with the machismo, my culture is a lot more open and sensual and focused. Like, even if it's, like women are allowed to be sensual and to show off their body and to also assert their desires, if they're attracted to a man, like it's more acceptable for the woman to do something. And so I always felt that, like, in contrast, when I moved to the US as a teenager, I was like, what is going on here? Why are people so repressed? This is so boring. So I always felt a little more edgy or out of the box in that sense, a little more free. So I would find that, I was just more willing to explore. And then, as a young adult in college or like right after college, I was a part of like sex positive communities and queer communities, and it was like this intersection of feminism and LGBTQ and sex positivity. And so I felt very empowered there, but then I had a big initiation in my life, which was the loss of my brother. And so when I lost my brother, yeah, like I kind of like had this breakdown, right?
Yeah.
And some of how I coped with that was actually a sort of um, distraction or escapism through sex and sexuality, and also like love, like I would say an addiction to love and sex, kind of.
Yeah.
And I think it was great because I explored a lot and I didn't attach to a lot of things, but there was a lot of pain and hurt and wounding operating, right? So I was always very pleasure driven and passion driven. And then maybe I like tipped it a little too far in that direction in an unhealthy way, right? And then my second initiation, I would say, was motherhood. So I had an unplanned pregnancy, right? Which I viewed a little bit as that thing where, oh, okay, I went too far in this direction. Now this is like bringing me back to center. Like, ooh, I have a choice here, but I think I want to choose motherhood. I was 32. I felt like I could handle it. I was like, maybe this is my chance. I'm too free spirited. I'm not the settled down type. I'm not going to get married. I just didn't see myself. I'm an artist, and like in the, like artist / theater world, there's just like a lot more fluidity in relationships and how people configure their relationships. And so I just didn't feel like I was going to be conventional. So I thought, oh, maybe this is my chance to be a mom, right? And really beautiful, to know myself in such a deeper way, and know my body and myself as a woman. Because I think a lot of my feminist training also kind of brought me to this more androgynous place, and a negation of my femininity, and a negation of my body and the cycles of my body. And so motherhood for me put me in touch with my animal body in a way I had never experienced before, and I really understood through being pregnant, through giving birth, through like fucking pushing the baby out with all the blood and guts and poop, and like it's
we talked about this before.
Gruesome, right?
The primal messy aspect of motherhood, which is like it does put you in touch with kind of those like bodily functions, for example, which are like, no one tells you a lot of times when you're giving birth that you're probably going to crap your pants during, or like, no one told me after I gave birth that like, oh, now you're going to go and probably, sit on the toilet and a bunch of more of the placenta is going to come out, and like big chunks of like, they look like aliens. I'm like, why is no one telling me this? I mean, literally the plug that exits your body when you're ready to give birth is, what do they call it? The bloody mess. They call it the bloody show, I think they call it. And it's like, it's literally quite a gong show of really putting you in touch with like your humanity in a lot of ways. Right?
Yeah, totally.
And also in pain. I tried to have an orgasmic birth that totally didn't happen. But it was quite for me, it was quite a initiation into like, I can do this. I did mine, in a birthing tub. Didn't work, no drugs. So I was like super lucid, but it was like, I'm going to rip in two. Like, this is not to scare anyone out there, but like, definitely you can have orgasmic births. I did not have one as much as I wanted one. But so it's like you have your child, and you are now in this new stage of, this new chapter of being a woman, right? And again, too, for anyone listening, this is not to negate those who choose not to go down the path of motherhood. And I actually want to touch on this in a minute on, how women can get in touch with that erotic mother aspect, even if they don't have children. But going back to, you've had your child, and what was the journey like for you to come back into, your sexuality and your sexual expression, because, and I really think that this is an important piece here in this conversation, because a lot of mothers that I know personally, and I'm sure that people listening out there know that person, that woman, maybe it's themselves, who once they step through the pathway of motherhood, they never fully make it and return back to reconciling the maternal and the erotic, and they stay kind of in that like sexless kind of mother who is always nurturing and caring, but out of touch with their pleasure and their bodies and their sensuality, and feeling
Mm-hmm.
sexy, you know? So how did you make it back? Like, what was that moment for you?
Oh my God, I could go into so many things. I'm gonna try
Maybe
to
share
like
stories.
highlights. Yeah, like
Yeah.
so. Hmm. So I still felt pretty sexual. Like even while I was pregnant, I felt really gorgeous
Mm.
pregnant. I felt like I am a goddess. I am bringing life into this world, And people would tell me that I was just like radiant and I was beautiful, But I was, my son's father was having a really hard time, and he was very present. He was there for me, but we were not in like a long-term romantic relationship. As I said, we were in a casual relationship and it was unplanned, but we both were like willing to embark on the journey. Right? So then all these feelings of like, oh, well, is he not attracted to me anymore because my body is changing? Or is it like emotional stuff going on with like the new impending responsibility of parenthood?
Mm.
And that kind of continued as my son was born. And it was like, oh, like, I've gained all this weight. I have these huge boobs. I'm breastfeeding most of the day. Like 90% of the day, I'm like freaking breastfeeding. And I was like, wait, so if he's not, and I'm really craving the masculine, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't even necessarily have language for this at the time, but I was like, oh, I just want to be held in this. Like, this is so much work. This is so much labor. Like, my body is a milk factory. I'm literally working all day. Like, my body is in overdrive, right? And I have to constantly attend to this little being, and my needs are like secondary. And I just really wanted that like strong, supportive, masculine energy to help me get through it. And I was like, oh man, like he's not with me in that way. Who is going to want to be with me while I have this like little child attached to me at the hip or at the breast? And all these like the stigma of like single mom, and like, is it weird that like I just had this kid but we weren't together? Are people gonna judge me? Like, who's gonna want to date me and like come into that situation? And like so many like doubts and questions, and so it wasn't so much that I didn't necessarily feel like my libido dropped that much. Like, I know a lot of women go through that. There's hormonal shifts. There's all, you're exhausted. You're not sleeping, like all these things. But I felt like if I had a partner, like that would have been my stress relief. Like, I would have loved to have like, a sensual sexual relationship in early motherhood. I think it would have been very nurturing and supportive. And I would kind of like envy my friends, my other mom friends who had just had their first babies, and then I'm like, oh, you have this, loving husband, and they'd be like, we're not having sex, and they'd be like, oh, I can't, like, I have a kid or kids on me all day touching me, and I just want to be like, I'm like overtouched, right? Like I'm overloaded. And so I barely have resources to give in that way to my partner. And I was like, oh, interesting. This is so interesting. Like, okay. So, and then I also found that a lot of the issues that I was dealing with in terms of, say, like body image or the stress, feeling like, oh, I can't be the free-spirited actress, traveler, globetrotter I was. I can't travel with this baby all over the place. I can't pick up and go whenever I want. So like that, those feelings of restriction, those were common too, even, you know, to the women, whether they were partnered or not. So I was like, oh, we're all going through this. This is a huge freaking identity shift. And where is the rite of passage? Where's the acknowledgement for this? Like, it's just like all focused on the baby, right? And like, yes, let's celebrate the baby. You brought the baby. And it's like, what about me? And so I think, just to answer your question, when my son was 2, I was starting to get a little bit more freedom in terms of like, we're weaning him now off of the breast. I breastfed my kid for like 3 years. Okay. I'm one of those
weird moms too. Yeah. the long haul moms. Yeah.
Yeah. And I never thought I would be that. I was like, I'm too on the move. I'm gonna be back to acting. Like,
more
the kid's
hippie
gonna
than
be,
you think.
yeah, totally. The kid's gonna be on bottles and babysitters. I'm gonna be at the theater rehearsing. I'm sorry, you know. And that was not the case. It was not. I became mama bear. I was like all in with the attachment parenting. And the funny thing is, so this is the external part, is men were hitting on me and approaching me. And I'm like, you see that I'm a mom and you don't care? Is this attractive? I was so confused. And then, because I was in like all this self-doubt, right? And I was like, oh, I'm in my mom sweats. You know, I'm like tired. Like, I'm not feeling sexy, right? I might be feeling sexual. You know, I might be wanting that, but I don't necessarily feel sexy and attractive, right? But I was getting attention. And so this is kind of where I started to be like, oh, maybe I need to get out there more. Maybe I need to explore this. Like, I'm limiting myself now, right? And so that was kind of like a turning point. But then I was in a relationship for 2.5 years, a monogamous relationship. And towards the end, there was a lot of tension around just life choices, values, and whatnot. And the sex drive was getting lower as we were like, you know, distancing, right? And things like that. And he became more a part of my life. And so he's now like sort of co-parenting with me. So as the responsibility goes up, right, the sexiness is like, you know, going down. And that's when that ended, I was like, you know, this is not what I want, right? That's when I started to seek out embodiment, sacred sexuality, and poly communities. So now it's like I tried to do the thing that I thought I was supposed to do. I tried to be with this long-term partner in a committed relationship that was very exclusive and focused. We were trying to build a business together. We were, you know, he's coming in more and more as like a step parent. We're talking about moving in together or getting married or whatever. And I was like, you know, there's something else. There's something missing. I don't feel like, you know, myself. There's still this wild woman, this wild nature that wants to come through. And I would get to her in workshops that I was doing around the wild feminine, divine feminine, yeah, like different containers where I was going for the sisterhood and I was going for the spirituality, but a lot of it was putting us in touch with our wild woman and putting us in touch with our body, with pleasure, you know, with abundance mindset, opening up energetically to receive.
And so then what happened with you in your, like, I guess your understanding of your work? Because you started to get into, well, like ritual ceremonies and archetypal expression. How did that come about?
So, yeah, I think it was a combination. I was trying to write a one-woman show. So I had done some shamanic training, and I knew that like I was being called to do something in relation to women and liberating women, especially with moms, right? And I wanted to write a show about my experience, like basically the story I just told you, this, you know, wacky story of being an actress, having an unplanned pregnancy, trying to get back in touch with myself, with my body, after this huge, you know, upheaval in my life. And I, you know, it just wasn't flowing.
Yeah.
It was like this old way that I had learned. This is what you do in theater, and this is, you know, you write a show and you know, monologue.
I'm sensing a theme here. And it's this theme around like not following the script. It's really like, but that's kind of connected with the wild woman, is that you have to explore your own path. And how fucking scary is that, right?
Oh my God. Like,
you
all
know,
of this. Yeah. All of this for me was about the unknown. Like, motherhood is the unknown. You just don't know, no matter how much you try to prepare, no matter how much you try to like listen to people and read books and go to hypnobirthing classes. You just don't know until you've embarked. And now you can't turn back. The gate has closed. Like, it's just like nothing can prepare you for this shit. And and it was just like, okay, people are giving me advice all the time, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Oh my God, you know, I did this, I shouldn't have, you know, don't do it. And it's just like really overwhelming, right? And it's like, how do I find myself and my voice? And how do I become not just self-responsible, responsible for this other being? And it's about leadership for me. Motherhood is about leadership, right? Like me stepping into my power and having to take this stance of like, no, I am the queen of this sovereign unit here, and I get to decide how I'm going to do it and what my values are around this, and you know, the day-to-day, right? Like,
yeah. Wow. And so I'm also sensing like there's this theme, and it's maybe it's related to your work now, and I want to get into that in a minute. You know, related to, you know, especially as entrepreneurs, as people that are carving our own paths, right? You know, I've done a ton of mentorships as well, and one thing I have learned is that like it doesn't matter who you mentor under. Your business is not going to look like anyone else's. If you actually want to be thriving, you've got to really explore what you like, and how you like to work, and how you like to express. And it's really about, like you said, like claiming your domain, claiming what works for you. You know, it's like some people love doing in-person stuff. Some people hate it. Some people love being on camera, on, you know, creating skits. I think of like JP Sears, right? He's not a woman, but he's, you know, someone who, he was a life coach, right? And he started out life coaching because, you know, that's what you do, and you do it in a certain way. And once he brought in comedy, which is like actually part of his big passion, and kind of like started to use comedy as a way to talk about like, you know, basically essentially what you do with life coaching, right? Figuring out life and your life. That's like, he literally is the embodiment of that. He had to come back to his actual passions and joy. And that's one of the biggest pieces of work that you do as someone who's a thriving entrepreneur, is like, you got to figure out what works for you. And sometimes that means doing a bunch of things and then them flopping because you actually didn't have passion for it, right? You know, so maybe you can
Absolutely.
speak to that. Like, I know you started out with, when we first met, you know, you were really getting into exploring archetypal work, and especially through Serena the Mermaid. And so, you know, yeah, maybe you can share it with us a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was actually, that's what flipped the switch. Is I was trying to do all these things through digital marketing, like learning about business as this like separate thing from me and from my passion, right? And I have to learn all these things, these systems, and have command of this to be able to get clients to like show up in the way that these other successful people are showing up, and that's how they're doing it. It just, well, because as a woman, it just I feel like there's all this programming around worth, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the biggest thing for me, is like, oh, am I really worthy of like being paid directly by people for my services or my value? Like, who am I to like presume that they would want to do that? You know, and it was just like this like monolithic they, you know, the market, or, you know, and it's like the voices of all this judgment. And then I stumbled onto this thing, which was just like, oh, I'm just trying to do things that light me up. I had COVID and I was shut in for like a month, and I was like, fuck this shit. I am done with this. This cannot be my life. I don't care if there's a fucking pandemic, World War III, whatever it is. Like, I need to feel alive. More, even more than before, right? And whatever's been going on, whatever has happened, I'm done crying over like lost time or bad decisions. I'm done, you know, being stuck and feeling like, oh, all these things are happening to me. Yeah, life happens, shit happens.
Yeah.
And I need to take control, and I need to, you know, move it along.
Move it along, sister. Well, and like also to this initiation over the past year and a half, 2 years, I feel like it's been this big wake up call for people to start living the fucking life that you actually want to be doing and living. Stop making excuses. Like find your own clarity. And that starts by like, you know, when we're feeling confused and like, what should I be doing? It's like, return to the simple things. Like, what did you enjoy doing as a child? What are the activities that if you had all the money in the world, what would you still do every day? You know, for me, it's stuff like getting around with a bunch of women, getting dressed up, screaming like banshees, you know, embodying archetypes, you know, talking about sexuality, like all the things that I'm doing now are, you know, so, you know, but this is the thing is like, yes, you could die tomorrow crossing the street. You could get a virus. You could get a vaccine. It doesn't fucking matter. You can die a myriad of ways, but how are you going to live today? You know, how are we going to live today? You know, and so how did you decide that you wanted to start living? And I want to hear about Serena the Mermaid, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like building up so much suspense.
Oh yeah,
all right.
You're making me drip, babe. I'm dripping.
So I think so. I went back. So the first thing was, I need to go back to burlesque. Right before I started dating my ex, I had been taking some burlesque classes, and I was so lit up. And it was one of the first times that I had felt that way since I became a mother. I felt like, you know, the free-spirited young actress, you know, expressing myself. People loved it. But then I stopped because of the relationship, because my partner was not, comfortable with me stripping nude on stage.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, okay, I'll just take classes and not perform. But of course, the classes diminished. So even though it was like okay for me to still do it, yeah, I somehow felt like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. It might jeopardize the relationship. It might make him feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. So that was like the big lesson for me, was like, I'm not willing to sacrifice myself and my expression, my authentic free expression, for anybody or anything. Right. Not my partner, not my child, or like fear of being seen as a bad mom, not for society, family, whatever. I first need to be not only taking care of myself, but I need to be in my true authentic expression. Right? I need to be real. I need to not be wasting all my energy on masking and sugarcoating and preserving and like, oh, I'm not going to make people uncomfortable. It's like, what about me? Where's my comfort? Right? And so I as I was going back to burlesque and getting into the sacred sexuality community and being in all these spaces where everyone is like welcoming this kind of expression, lauding it, supporting it, right? Encouraging it. I was like, wow, oh my God, I found my peoples. I found my tribe. This is kind of like a bunch of theater people.
Little kinkier.
Yeah, a little kinkier. They're mixing in spirituality. They're mixing in sexuality. I was like, oh my God, this is like everything I've always wanted. I'm like having an orgasm just being here, right? And I was invited to perform at a virtual play party. And I was like, oh my God, but I don't have a routine yet. I just like started back, like, I have some moves, but I don't have a routine. And I had this idea about doing a mermaid thing, right? And so I was like, okay, I have a week to prepare this. And I just like ordered a bunch of stuff on Amazon. And then I was like, I came up with this concept. So it wasn't burlesque exactly, it was more interactive, and it was like Serena is in the temple of the wild goddess, and the goddess has granted her human form, and now in this tantric temple we need to explore our senses in this new temple body, and like can you human souls guide me and help me figure this out? And it was just so delicious because, people didn't know what to expect. It was, it could go anywhere. It depended on the audience. And, I performed a handful of times, and it was totally different each time. Totally different.
And how did you feel in yourself doing this? Because I can imagine that you really got to see aspects of yourself that you were seeing for the first time. And I want to maybe presence this for anyone who's new to archetypal embodiment work. It really gives you this window into like, holy fuck, like I can really access this part of myself because it's not acting so much as like, it is and it isn't. It's really like you become this part of yourself, but it's tapping into it through giving yourself permission. Like, okay, I'm going to become this erotic mermaid, and you get to see yourself. Like, you're like, holy, I am a sensual being. I am. This past year, and again, I love giving myself permission to play. Like this past year, I've really given myself permission to. I call her my Dom kitty. And so my Dom kitty is like, this whip. I'm going to bring it out. And she wants to just like, I'm naughty and like, I'm the boss. But she's like really, like, she really wants to be dommed hard, but she's like, kind of sassy. She's that, so she's like,
she wants to be tamed.
She wants to be tamed, but she'll like, I'm the boss. You listen to me, turn over. And then of course, like, my lover will be like, get on the bed or whatever. But it's really fun. So Dom Kitty is like this piece. Oh, I didn't know I had this. And she's like, she's a bit more feisty, than my maybe my more like sensual, like come hither, embodiment.
Like the sultry seductress.
Yeah. Or, my primal wild woman who's just like, give me her, whatever. Right. So there's these different pieces that we can access. When you started to access this mermaid essence, like what did she tell you about who you are? Or what did she show you about yourself that you can be so luscious, or that you can be so embodied and confident, maybe?
Yeah, it's kind of ironic because Serena is very serene and she's very innocent. So she's not the like man-eating siren, you know. She's not super sultry. It's more of that like I know that they're like the virgin energy. I know that there's something really exciting and enticing, and I want it. I'm like, I'm not sure. There's a little, like there's this like mystery and tingle, and I want to find out. I'm so curious. But it's coming from a place. So to embody that level of innocence and be shame-free, like shameless, because she doesn't have shame, right? She's a mermaid. She's she's a goddess embodied, right? And she's magical. So she doesn't have any notions of like the stigmas around women and their body, their yoni, their sexuality, their expression. She's just like, what is this? What can you feel in this? Like, I don't have any hangups. I don't have any fears of what someone might think or might say. So that's where it was like the ultimate confidence. Like I'm not overcoming like what I was embodying was I'm not overcoming all this shame. Or I'm not like, I want to show off this sensuality. I'm trying to seduce or it was like, I'm just here in my radiance and I'm ready to explore.
So did this give you an aspect into your own inner curiosity, and just like the ability to even also hold space for other people? Maybe was this when you really started to understand like, oh, I have a gift for this. I really do have a gift for supporting people in being shame-free in their own bodies as well. Like, and again, this is a huge piece of this work, I think, too, with archetypal embodiment and sacred sexuality is really, like us as you know going back to our indigenous roots, right? Wherever those may lead, we used to grow up in villages, and I'm sure that we would have like these big parties in villages where, people would spy on each other and watch each other make love, or, like there was probably more connection to these things. And now we have those elements of voyeurism you see with like, porn or sexual media, but you don't actually get to see that in the flesh, unscripted. Like, porn is kind of its own thing. It's very constructed. It is totally acting, most of it, right? Unless you're watching amateur. And then there's usually no connection. So to actually like watch people or be around people touching their bodies or connecting to their sensuality, is actually way more intimate and vulnerable than people understand, right? So, would you say too that really started to get you into those next like forays into this work too as well, right? When you started to see like the power of that healing in yourself and in other people.
Absolutely. And what people would tell me was that like when they saw these performances, it would be like a transmission. And like they would have like a heartgasm, like they would really feel the heart energy and the goddess energy flowing through me. And that was kind of like, what made me realize what this could be really powerful. And I wasn't necessarily trying to do that in a way as like a service or it really was meant to be a performance that had a transformative effect, right? Almost like a ritual or a ceremony. But then, you know, based on people's reactions, I realized that I could make it into something that could be shared, you know, in different ways, in different venues, even creating immersions, retreats, yeah, like tailored experiences, and you know, even like you know, whether it was a group situation or a one-on-one situation, that these elements could be used, you know, to create that container for people.
I know that the conversation is good when I start to get downloads, and I'm like, I have to like make note of this. Like there's stuff like pouring through, right? You know, because we really are in the wild west of this work. And I would say that those that are in this pathway, like there's not a lot of mentors doing this work. I would say like it's kind of like this divine dispension that's happening across the world right now. And you know, for those of you who are familiar with Richard Rudd's work and the Gene Keys, like he was recently sharing about how, you know, we're here to template these new archetypes on the planet, and part of that is we need to explore them, and we need to be open to explore them, because there's these new energies that want to be expressed and felt and seen through through our physical temple, you know. And part of what we're seeing is this reclamation of peace on the planet, but like orgasm is probably the closest thing to peace that we actually experience in our bodies. And so, you know, how do we allow the nervous system to relax enough, to be open enough, to be free enough, to expand into those transcendental states, right? With not just ourselves, but then in group experiences. And, you know, indigenous cultures, they really do utilize archetypes. And this is a piece that I want to just kind of briefly touch on, because I know we could talk for hours around this work. It is super fascinating, but indigenous cultures use a lot of you know, shamanic practices of embodying energies like the trickster, right? You see this in especially West Coast indigenous culture here where I live, in British Columbia, you know, like the raven is the trickster. Like they embody that because they realize it's a part of ourselves, right? And in the world, though, at large, a lot of times we project like, oh, that person's bad, that person's evil. And instead of realizing they're just these mirrors, these sacred mirrors of ourselves. So, you know, where you're at in your work now, I know that you are really developing a body of work around archetypal exploration, guiding people. You've been mentoring with a really incredible shamanic theater practitioner. You know, how are you supporting people in their work, in their life right now through this path of archetypal expression and sacred sexuality?
So what I'm doing is I'm inviting people into exploring their desires and their like raw truth. So for me, desire is a portal into that truth, because we like, especially women, we're often so afraid to just even admit our desires, let alone like claim them and go after them, you know, call them in, however you want to see it. So, and that's the biggest block, is it's like, oh my God, I don't even want to admit that I want this, because, oh, if I do, then it might be painful, because I might be disappointed. I might be let down, you know, like I'm not going to be met in this. And it could be anything, right? It could be any type of desire. And so I'm trying to craft customized containers based on people's unique experiences and baggage, and whether it's like erotic, right, or not. It doesn't have to be explicitly erotic, right? But it's how can we create a safe space to express what is really true for us, and based on that, what we really want, and what are the things that come up when we even try to express those things. And more than like healing trauma or healing shadow, or what I want to create is a space for rewiring and recoding and rewilding. So this is a creative space. So it's, again, not scripted. I'm not walking
formulaic.
No, I am not going to walk you through a little process that I've mapped out, that, oh, this was my process that I came through and this was my journey. So I'm going to share that with you, and you're going to go along with it, and then you're going to go from A to B. No, you're probably going to go from A to Z and back to D and then to F and R, and I don't know where you're going to go. I don't know where we're going to go, but I'm willing to follow the signs. And that is what maybe I would be sharing in terms of what I've been through, is like, I've been following the breadcrumbs, right? And so I see, okay, this is lighting me up. Let me keep going. Let me try again. And then there's, the next invitation and the next opportunity and the next connection.
It's almost like tracking, like there's a term in shamanic kind of practice where you track, or Toltec shamanism talks about this as well, is that you track kind of energy. And tracking is really, it's like connecting to that wild essence, right? Like as a primal animal, like you got to track, right, to hunt. And so you want to track where energy is wanting to go. Right. They also talk about this too, in a lot of tantra practice, right? Like that you listen to where the energy wants to flow. I remember being, in university, and I was about to embark on a master's program with urban planning. Urban fucking planning, because I just finished like this architectural bachelor's program, because I left the arts path because, quote unquote, you don't make money as an artist. And I'm like, now I make, probably the same amount of money as a fucking urban planner does, doing exactly all this crazy weird shit. But like, I saw, like, I actually got a glimpse of me, like, in this path. It was actually very clear. And I was in an office, like, all the time. I was like, I'm dead. I'm lifeless. Like, it just didn't feel alive. And so it's like tracking aliveness and like the energy. So that sounds really beautiful. And where can people find out more about you and your work?
So my website is carinaalencar.com, CarinaAlencar.com. And right now, what's sort of like my banner, right now, because I might shapeshift, okay, is selvaging, which we mentioned earlier. And it's really exploring that, what is the space of wilderness? Like, if I didn't have all this social script, cultural script of what I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to show up, what role I'm supposed to play, how would I show up? What would I do? What would I want? What would my expression be? And so again, it's for me, the initial thing was that mermaid energy. And now it's kind of expanded, and I was, seeing myself as the jaguar. So I have a performance where I'm more embodying that energy, and I invite people to explore their animal and free their animal from the cage.
Oh, love it. Love it. Can I join? You mentioned that you're also
anytime.
You mentioned you're building a community too, a selva community. Maybe where can you find that?
So selva is my jungle, where I am inviting people to play with me. And, I have a soft spot for moms. And so there's something that will be coming out. I mean, in November, I'm teaching a wild mothering workshop at the Eros Tantra Festival,
beautiful
online festival. But yeah, I want to also create something specifically for mothers, the Wild Mother's Den.
Beautiful.
But right now you can come into Selva by subscribing on my website, and you can also reach out for a call to see if you would like to create a wild journey for your own, to explore your own wilderness. What's your landscape, right, of wild, and how can we create something through art, through ritual and ceremony, through embodiment and somatic practices, to give you that stage and give you that safe container to express yourself. And
Beautiful.
Uncage, unleash.
Beautiful, beautiful, Carina. This is so exciting. Well, thank you so much for just bringing this richness, this fucking passion and aliveness and juiciness to Temple Talks. Because again, this is the place where we can free ourselves. And I think that the new earth is going to be this, it's truly, we have to embody the world that we want to be living in, right? And that's through our vessels, right? These are the temples that we birth these new prayers. So thank you for bringing these prayers to existence simply through this conversation. And for those listening, please check out Carina's work, her website, and her journeys. They're fantastic. Carina's a wild muse of delight and pleasure and yumminess and creative expression. She's just been such a beautiful queen in our Queen's Council, and I'm just so proud of her and this expansion. So thank you for being with us here today, Carina, and I love you so much. Oh.
Thank you so much. It's been so amazing working with you, Phoenix.
No.
You inspire me so much. Yeah, it's such a privilege. And I really think, to your point, I really think the new earth is really the new human. Like the earth, she's, doing her thing. We're the ones that have to kind of, upgrade. And I think especially the new woman, because who's going to raise the new earth's children, And if mothers are not, like really, upheavaling, up leveling, all the bullshit that has been put on us, if we don't find our power and our passion, we can't raise a new generation.
In our communities, and creating communities, asking for support, creating communities around ourselves, right? For that.
Oh, absolutely.
The time of the lone wolf archetype is so done, and it's time to be part of a pack, and this is where, again, I really applaud the work that you are putting out there with, like inviting more support, inviting women to receive more support, regardless if they're mothers or not. So thank you for just embarking on your path, right? And
absolutely.
So thank you again, Carina. And thank you again. Another episode, wonderful, juicy episode of Temple Talks, Transmissions from the New Earth.